Thank you everyone for joining us. We are streaming live on YouTube, and hence why you heard a little two of me for a moment. But I'm really excited about our third show today and having our guest Kelly Hall of Malwarebytes here. And before we dive into the topic of deploying a CS solution, I just wanted to introduce the show and a little bit about what you can expect today and in future shows. So our goal is to really simplify CS. Over the past few years, we've noticed that there've been a lot of complicated theories about a one way and the way to do customer success. And we all know there is no one answer. Every company has a unique product and a unique way to deliver the customer experience. So our goal is to interview leading experts around the world and to better understand how are they scaling people, process, and systems. And so that's what we aim to do with every 30-minute power show of the CS Makeover show. So with that, I'm your host, Amelia Dansica, and Kelly comes from a great background. She has not only deployed customer success solutions 4 times, but she has been a chief customer officer and a VP at several companies, including CA Technologies and BMC. So without further ado, Kelly, thank you for joining us on the show. And
Thanks for having me. Good afternoon, I guess, for some.
I'd love for you to actually share a little bit more about, well, what does Malwarebytes do, and then your role?
Yeah, sure. So Malwarebytes is a cybersecurity company. We offer cyber protection solutions to consumers and to businesses. It's a really interesting story. The founder, who is our CEO, founded the company about 13 years ago. He was a teenager because he was trying to remove malware that he got on his family's computer. And then really just took a passion for, ridding the world of malware in totality. And so that's been his driver. He's incredibly inspirational. And like I said, I think it was the start of this year, we hit 13 years. So it's a great company. I joined in August of last year. There was already a fantastic CS team here. They had been around for about 2 years. I think the CS team had started up. And so I joined as the VP of Customer Success to help broaden that curated customer experience, to put some more formality about it, around it, the process, the technologies, the experience that I had and applied it. So it's about 9 months. It feels like it's been 9 days. But we're really focused on the standards that you see for CS, driving, time to value for our customers, engagement, adoption of the technology, really with the intention of creating a great experience for our customers and driving, retention and expansion opportunities.
So Kelly, and I'm sure the audience has a lot of questions for you as well. So as we're going through this, please do, for anyone who's joined us today, share your questions in the Q&A. We'll try to get through as many as possible. But Kelly, before we get to the after state or what you've been doing over these 9 months, can you share a little bit more about when you were joining the organization? What were some of the key elements or things that you saw in the org that you felt you really wanted to have an impact on?
Yeah, so when I joined, like I said, the team was already established. They were doing a fantastic job. They had the CSMs individually had a very large book of business. And at the time, they were managing it within our CRM tool. And so they were using basically a custom section within the CRM tool that they could capture things like notes around the conversation that they had with the customer, the last contact date. And the company actually, while I was interviewing, was in the process of searching for a C360 tool. And so they had gone through multiple POCs with multiple vendors. And that was happening just as I accepted the role. And so I was able to kind of jump in even before I started to look at the requirements, understand. Ultimately, we ended up selecting Gainsight, but we looked at 3 or 4 different tools, based on the needs that we had. And what was really interesting is looking at not only, and I think this is really important as you're looking at your C360s, not only what do you need today to manage your business, but how do you want to scale and grow, and how is that technology going to support you 2 to 3, 4 years from now to make sure the intelligence is there, the automation, the orchestration is all available. And so Malwarebytes had very much a focus on customer success and the customer experience. They knew they had to scale with technology, but it was so labor intensive for our CSMs. Like I said, they had a very large book of business that they were managing. Nothing was really at their fingertips. We had multiple systems that they needed to go into to get data about the customer, to understand their current state, how they were deployed. And so the intention was really to bring in that kind of holistic tool that would be one-stop shopping, that would allow us to drive some automation with our workflows, to be what I call proactively reactive. So to be data-driven and engage our customers before there's a problem, right? To use some of those predictive indicators to say, okay, there's potentially something that's going to happen that we want to prevent, and or more importantly, to provide that value add to our customers, to make sure that we're looking at the data, the usage, the metadata, the telemetry that we have from our systems, to ensure that they're leveraging best practices and ultimate configurations, where that wasn't something that they were really able to do, because at the time they were just using a field and a CRM system, and so their contact was more topical than being able to get into that value base. And we knew that was something that we wanted to change.
And Kelly, I will say, as a consultant in the customer success field, there's nothing worse than seeing CSMs having check-ins because they're being told you have to do a weekly or monthly or quarterly check-in, but not having any value add, no information about how the client is engaging with the platform or not, so that those catch-ups, and I always tell teams, do not label your meetings catch-up. The chances of an executive showing up are 0. So you really want to make sure you have that value add. And I really appreciate that. Now I want to engage the audience, and Paul, our producer, is going to have a question pop up in a poll. And while everyone is answering, we're also going to address David Cho's question. Thank you for doing that. So I'm going to put the poll up right now. And the question is, and you have 30 seconds to answer. And then Kelly, I would love for you to comment on what we're seeing here in the poll. The question is, what's a key indicator that you need a CS solution? And David's question is very similar. How do you determine that you need something more than that field your team, Kelly, was filling in to track your customers? Right, all the answers are coming in. We'll wait a little bit longer because I'd love to get at least 50% of the audience engaged here.
I wish there was a all of the above option.
Prioritize, Kelly, prioritize. All right. And we'll give it a couple more seconds. And I'm seeing that Patrick has a question as well. We'll address this in the poll. All right, I'm ending it. Let's see. So it looks like 68% when it comes down to it, the majority of the audience said it comes down to the health score status. What are your thoughts on that? Would you agree?
It really depends on where you are in your life cycle of your kind of CS journey and rolling it out. And so, so I've come into, in my almost 20 years of doing this, I've come into organizations at different times. Definitely the customer health or status is a priority. I have found in the past, though, that you can get that from other systems, whether it's looking at NPS or CSAT, usage, right? So it really depends on the journey. For me, my bigger concern, honestly, would be probably more around even the CSM having their own process to onboarding, right? And really just CSMs having their own process in general, or not having the oversight as to when those customers are being engaged. Like, there is nothing worse as a CS leader than to be blindsided by churn or an upset customer, and then you find out we haven't had engagement with them in 4, 6, 8 months, right? And so I really think it depends on the stage of the journey that you're in. I think if you have an established CS organization, you have CSMs, you have your processes, definitely I agree with the customer health or status. I think if you're earlier on, you may want it to actually help put some of those processes in place and regiment the team to ensure that you're starting out, even if it's with the basics, a consistent experience for the customers.
I love that. And before we get into what you did and implemented, I want to take some of these questions because I think it really goes with the poll. So Colin is asking, do you have any tips on how to ensure your practitioners, those who are expected to use the tool, adopt and realize the value from it too?
So it's a great question. And I would say that, and I'm not going to lie, that it usually starts by stick versus carrot, if that makes sense, right? And you're rolling out a new technology, the CSMs, and we went through this at Malwarebytes, and frankly, I don't fault anybody, but every CSM has their own process. They're capturing it by writing the information down, or they're using Evernote or OneNote, or they have their own process. They have their own means of executing on their business. And now here you're coming in and disrupting it and saying, no, 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 we have to do it totally different. And I'm really transparent with my teams. I tell them, this is going to be brutal at first. It's going to seem time consuming, but here's the end state we're working towards. And ultimately that end state is actually to make your job easier. Right. So the system is now feeding you data on what you have to act, who you have to engage and when, versus you trying to figure it out on your own, mine your own data, search and query. So one of the things we do here at Malwarebytes is we use OKRs as our measurement. And so one of our team OKRs that goes down to all the individual CSMs is that they're not allowed to have any overdue CTAs. And so we use our team and our corporate metrics, and whether you use a V2MOM or OKRs or whatever your management system is, we specifically have one in there around Gainsight hygiene, because without the hygiene, there's no value. If you have a bunch of overdue CTAs and you don't really know the status of your customers, you don't have any better handle on your business than you did before you had CTAs or a 360.
I love all of these tips. When I'm working with clients and they're evaluating CS platforms, I always ask the question, is your data clean? And when we put the poll up on the show invite earlier this week, and I asked people who we invited, what is your biggest challenge? Number one was dirty data. So you blame the platform for not working, but the reality is it's a hygiene thing. So I love that you include that in your OKRs. Now, there are great questions coming up. We're going to get to them, but the reality is the suspense is killing me, and hopefully it's killing the audience. Kelly, what have you done these past 9 months that have been instrumental in changing not only how the organization is functioning, but also how you're scaling? I mean, you're growing with velocity. So tell us more.
So we actually had an incredibly rapid deployment. Like I said, I've done this multiple times. I've done it well. I've done it not so well. I'll be totally honest. This has been the most impressive implementation that I've been through, and even frankly that I've heard of within my network. So we had a very quick MVP, and our MVP was just to start to get our CRM data and our customer data into Gainsight. And this is really applicable whether it's Gainsight or another 360 tool. We happen to use Gainsight, but we get that data in and get basic capturing of data up front. And we did this in about a 6-week time frame, from like project kickoff to our MVP going live. It actually might have been even a little shorter than that. But the intention was, okay, let's get the data there and start capturing information on a timeline. So we have ongoing data that we could query. Once we got through that, and we had a unidirectional from our CRM into Gainsight, we then very quickly added additional with our data store that has usage data, a lot of telemetry about our customers, our Zendesk application. And so very quickly we started in the beginning of August. By the end of November, we had all of our customers in the C360. We had 4 or 5 CTAs built out. We had our integrations to our support systems, our CRM, our internal telemetry. We were able to roll out a risk remediation program. So identifying risk and putting risk remediation plans in place for our customers. And those are all the tactical outcomes. The real strategic outcomes that came out of that is that we actually were now able to pivot to become value-based engagement with our customers, because we were doing the check-ins. We had, it was like hands on keyboard all day long. We now had the time and space because we were leveraging the system to tell us when we saw deployment drops in our customers, when we saw a lack of logins to the system. We were then able to be proactive, reactive, and engage with a value base to say, customer, is something wrong? Is everything okay? What's going on? And we moved away from the check-ins to really every single interaction now is value-based to those customers. We were able to also start servicing a whole other part of our business that we weren't touching before. And so one of our goals is to go down stack. We were kind of servicing the top tier of our customers, and we rolled this out. We went live really with the full system November. In January, we hired CSMs to take on a low touch model. We were able in March to roll out that model to 800 new customers. So we have three CSMs that are now servicing 800 additional customers in a low touch. I say low touch, not tech touch, because I don't believe in pure tech touch, but in a low touch model. And we're seeing so many efficiencies that we're actually going to be able to add another 500 or 600 customers to those existing 3 CSMs. So we can now start expanding our curated experience, not just to the top tier customers, because let's be honest, all of our customers need a curated experience, but we can do it with technology and automation that's now going to drive, that makes sense for us as a business, but also really focuses on all of our customers really having a thoughtful engagement with us. And then by the end of the year, we're actually going to expand that to about another 5,000 customers. So,
wow.
It's a huge win for us. And by the way, we have the orchestrator configured. We haven't even launched that yet. So we don't even have that efficiencies yet, right? We're using event-based management. So, for us, I really feel like the opportunities are a bit endless, for us right now. We have, kind of 2 big waves of like go live and then like automation go live, right? So we had this super exciting time in November, and now we're in this super exciting time again to show how we can really impact customers of all sizes without it being detrimental, frankly, to the gross margin of our business.
Yeah, well, there's so many things I want to dive into, but I know this is a 30-minute show, and I love this question from Brian, because I think this really is a challenge that leaders have. How did you justify hiring CSMs for the low touch model? I think you started to answer it around, well, look, we have 800 customers. We're going to add 500 to 600 more to 3 CSMs. I'm quickly doing the math, and it sounds like it would be easy to justify to executives, but did you have hurdles, or how did you overcome them?
So I'm fortunately or unfortunately, everything in my life is a business case. You can ask my husband, daughter, like every I build even if it's a 2-sentence business case to convince my 5-year-old to do what I need her to do. The high level business case. So we looked at, okay, if we hire 3 CSMs, what would be the price point of those CSMs? We did what we call a capacity model. So we built out a capacity model based on what our high touch motion was, to say, okay, what's the different motions that a low touch would be? And then estimated out what we thought the number of customers that we could cover it with, the headcount. And then we took the ARR that those customers count, and honestly, it was a really simple model. When you looked at the total ARR and the total expense of the CSMs, and even if you add, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 points of retention on those or upsell on those customers, it just made sense, the model. But yeah, we had to make the business case to say, okay, here's what it's going to cost, but here's the ROI by doing it. And we did it. So we added the first 3 and we said, okay, with this first 3, we're going to do this segmentation of customers. We just got through that in our Q1. And now we said, okay, do we have to hire more? We did the analysis and we said, no, we actually can onboard another 500 customers to the existing resources, again, to make that ROI, even better for us.
So it sounds like Paul, who's our producer, we need to put on the Simplifying CS website a business case toolkit that the audience can use for their own businesses as they're putting together a low touch model. So thank you for that idea, Brian. We have more questions. Before we get to them, I'm just curious, are you still going to share with the audience your project plan that you rolled out your platform?
Yep. Great. And one of the reasons why I really want to share that is that what I think made this implementation more successful, or I should say like more rapid time to value, is that, and Malwarebytes was doing this before I joined, so I can't take credit for this, but there was a cross-functional project team, and really a program that was put together for this. And one of the things that I've realized out of this go around of implementing a 360 was the need to get those internal stakeholders on board upfront, right? And so our cross-functional team included our IT department, included our sales operations for our CRM tools, it included our data store team, it included our product team, it included our sales team. And so you'll see that in the project plan. And I also put the stakeholders and who made up kind of the overall program in there. But for me, that was a big lesson. This kind of 4th time around was really understanding and making sure you got that internal buy-in early from all of the stakeholders to move fast, because you need the data, you need sales input, you need those relationships. So yeah, we'll share it for sure.
Okay, great. And I did a coaching session this morning, and one of the biggest the feedback I gave this woman is I said, stop trying to do everything yourself. You need more stakeholders in this project, or you're setting yourself up for failure. So I love that advice. We are going to the Q&A because there are so many great questions. Let's start with Ben's. It's around community. Kelly, you have so many clients that you're servicing right now as an organization. Do you have a community, especially given that you're in the data protection? Are your clients willing to be part of the community and share information?
So not as much as in previous companies that I've worked at, right? Mm-hmm. Also, I think it comes down to the stakeholders of our product too, right? They're CISOs, they're admins in the security. What we do have is our community is really focused around things like that we have what's called like our VIP communities, where we really interact with them. We don't have a broader one. One of the things that we're focusing on and is one of my goals for this year is to get more customer feedback into the organization and disseminate it across. So we do have a couple programs now. We have a COO kind of board, we have a CAB, we have our VIP community. But I think, unless you're hearing from, 75% of your customers, you never quite are capturing enough of the voice, right? And so we're always looking to expand on.
Great. All right. Well, let's get to the next questions with 4 minutes. Vidya is asking, what is the average time each CSM spends with the customer in your low touch model?
So the way our low touch model works is it's primarily all over email right now, unless the customer requests a call. And so I would say they're spending maybe, I have to look at the data. I would say maybe 2 hours a quarter And that's because they're using data insights to engage the customer. They're looking at their usage to recommend best practice configurations. They're also not necessarily technical experts, right? So we curate, leadership curates a lot of the content for them, right? So look for customers that don't have policy X turned on. Here's the template that you send, and then they send it out. They then will field any responses and then curate a call with support or engineering or product or leadership if needed. And so they're still very, very value-based, and the engagement's very value-based for our customers. But I would say there may be, an hour or two a quarter. It's not a lot of time. And then once we put Journey Orchestrator, once we flip the switch on that, the intention is all the outbound emails will be automated, and all the responses will be personalized. So that way we can really leverage that low touch model to make sure there's still a person on the other end of the email, but the outreach will be all automated based on that proactive reactivity to data that's changing, evolving, within the systems.
So all of your information, and this goes to a question that someone asked earlier, all of your data from your support platform, whether it be Zendesk or something else, or maybe a digital adoption platform like Pando, is it all going into Gainsight and then the CSMs have access to it?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. And I imagine having a centralized place for all this information is critical for these.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, great.
That really streamlines it. Yeah.
Yeah. Good. So we answered that question. The next one is, how is information shared between your CSMs, product teams, and development?
Yep. So there's a couple ways. So our executives all have access into Gainsight if they want to go choose. We have a couple different programs. We have a product champion program that's within our CS organization, that we also use Gainsight to gather the feedback that the CSMs get directly from customers. So it's a particular timeline update, and then we extract that information, and then on our monthly product syncs, we share that information with product and engineering so we can use that. We have other feedback tools that customers can submit, but this is specifically what comes in from the CSMs. But again, all of our executives have access to the dashboard, and then our sales organization, especially the folks that are really responsible for the renewals, are actually in Gainsight and working pretty regularly.
Okay, great. And that answered another question for Colin around who else has access to your customer success platform. So I would love to answer Josh's. I think this is a really important one. And we'll probably end with this, since at Pulse Everywhere, we're going to do a deeper dive on this topic. Josh is asking, at what general stage or size do you know that a company needs to implement a CS solution? Yeah,
that's a great question. And, not necessarily easy to answer. So, look, I think it really depends on when you have the CSM staffed and when you have control of your data, right? Any 360 tool, it's kind of garbage in, garbage out, right? And so you have to make sure you have control. I can tell you, when I started at one of my previous companies, early on, we were building the CS practice. We started just managing on. I was the first person there, and then I hired 2 people in pretty rapidly. But we started just with a spreadsheet. I mean, we literally just took a spreadsheet and started there, and then we moved it to our CRM, right? And because we didn't know what we didn't know at the time, we weren't super sure of our customers, where they were in the process. And so, for me, once we got 2 or 3 CSMs on board, as we were building that practice net new, that's when we really had to start looking at the C360. Now, it was a sizable book of business already, the ARR for that product line, and it was being tracked in a CRM. But I think as you start to scale the resources that are going to be working with the customers, is when that 360 tool becomes really important. One, so they understand that customer journey, where they are, when to reach out, but 2, so you can actually start to look at your business holistically, be able to do bottoms up forecasting of retention, look at bottom up forecasting of upsell opportunities, and then overall health score. So I really, you know, to me, it's the more people you add to your CSM team, and obviously they're not cheap. C360s aren't cheap. So you have to look at the annual ARR of the business that you're managing to make sure that, you know, it aligns to the cost that you're going to spend for a C360.
Okay, great. Wow, there have been so many great insights. Kelly, I'm really excited to tell the audience that we will be continuing this conversation at Pulse Everywhere. We're also going to include Lorna Henry from a company called Modern Health, as she's been scaling her organization. I've been fortunate enough to have worked with her and her programs at Modern Health. So we're going to continue this conversation around how do you get a CS org up and running quickly. I hope you'll join us. And then we're also going to host another event. My partner, Sabina Pons, and I will be hosting an event really focused on parenting and that balancing, and I don't believe in balance, but juggling of parenting and being a customer success leader. So I hope to see you all at Pulse Everywhere. And Kelly, thank you so much for this session. It's just been full of nuggets that we can't wait to write about and share on our website, Simplifying CS.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Bye, everyone. See you next month.